Okay, we're definitely live now, glowing from the inside out. An interview with Katie DePaola. I'll just go ahead and kind of introduce the show tonight. I know we're normally calling these events master classes, and this is kind of like a master class. Like I was listening to Oprah's podcast the other day, and she calls them master classes where she interviews people, right? So it's similar in that sense. Although we're not going to give you any like learning outcomes or anything today. My name is Liv Chapman. I'm COO and Director of Training at Inner Glow Circle. I feel like I'm always saying that. So if you're new, that's who I am. if you're a returning visitor, I know you're sick of the same line, but you guys, everyone has seen a lot of our trainers, and we wanted to kind of come on and do a little bit of something different. So I'm hoping to interview our CEO, Katie DePaola, who I'm going to let tell you about herself in a couple moments, so I can also set something else up. And then we're going to I want to keep it really real here. I'm not going to do a lot of the same questions that, we often talk about. I want to talk about some other stuff. And I think I've prepared some questions, and we'll see where the night takes us. And if you have questions for Katie, feel free to, comment. If you follow me on Instagram, I asked, what questions are you too afraid to ask Katie that I won't be too afraid to ask her?
Oh my God.
So feel free to anonymously message me there too, at the Liv Chapman. If not, I'll just stick to my script. Okay. So Katie, why don't you give everyone a little bit of an introduction, and I'm just going to set a couple things up for us so that we're recording this properly.
Okay, boss. Hi, everyone. My name is Katie DePaola. I'm the CEO of Inner Glow Circle. This company was founded in 2015. So we are almost 4 years old. This is our fourth year of business. And I started coaching back in 2012, at the end of 2012. So I've been coaching for 6 years now. And this is really my passion. I very much feel like it's my life's work. And we're going to talk about this a little bit today, I think, unless Olivia just has a completely different agenda. But my work is really about teaching women how to, or those identifying as women, or who feel safer in female oriented spaces, how to find their glow, find their greatest level of want. Glow has recently told us that it was an acronym. And so we were like, okay, what are you? And we realized that word just had more depth than we first thought when we landed on it as part of the brand. And when you access your greatest level of want, your glow, your highest level of desire for yourself, for your family, for your community, for the world, then that's where real growth and transformation happen. And the power of coaching is that it really is a domino effect. I mean, I've said this for years, but my job is to, and we teach this in IGC to our trainers and to our students, like as a coach, your job is to change lives that then go and change other lives, right? So when people say that, one-on-one coaching isn't enough or isn't impactful enough for you to really grow your business, I actually don't fully agree with that. I know that to really scale your business, maybe you have to launch products or programs or do group coaching. However, I think that one-on-one coaching is really the foundation, because when you work with one people, I believe that you're really, really strongly impacting at least 10 other people. Olivia, I know you're not laughing at me. So what are you laughing at?
I was laughing when you said when you work with one people.
Is that what I said?
Yeah, it's fine. I was laughing, but I had muted myself so I could.
I thought maybe something happened, but no, when you work with one people or one person, you really end up working with all of the people that are really close to them as well. And if you're working with coaches, like if you're coaching or training other coaches, which is what Olivia and I do, and our team, who you've heard from a lot over the past week, this is what they do. There's really this like massive domino effect. So one-on-one work is really powerful. Coaching is really powerful. And for me, I spent like pretty much my entire life asking and really feeling stuck around, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? What is my purpose? What am I here for? What am I here for? What am I here for? And so, some people say, oh, you're just here to experience joy, and you're here to be love. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, what does that actually mean? Right? Like, what's the bottom line? And I get that. And I get the being of joy and embodiment and love and all of that. And that's really, really important. But I wanted to know how do I actually integrate who I am into the career aspect of my life? And so for me, my dad had always said to me, and he's very intuitive, but he had always said to me, Katie, your future career may not exist. Your future career, what you're going to end up doing, may not exist because you're an innovator. And so it's really interesting. And Olivia and I have a lot of really big dreams for ourselves and for the company. And a lot of what we've done didn't exist. And a lot of what we want to continue to do doesn't exist right now. And so we had a conversation about this on Leaders Rising yesterday, which is our second level program after you graduate from coach training that's available to you. And most of us, we were talking about how like we have to be the leaders that we never really had. And so when you think about turning your pain to your pain into purpose, and when you think about finding your glow and truly glowing from the inside out, it really means that you get to become the person that you always sought after and that you always wanted to be, and that you get to inspire others. So yeah, I'm excited to be here today. And of course, I'm happy to be here with Olivia as always.
As always.
As always.
Great. You actually answered part of my first question in your introduction, which I had a feeling would happen. So good thing I made extra questions. Good thing. Okay. So welcome to the Glow from the Inside Out interview. Katie already kind of explained what that was and GLOW as an acronym. So you told us a little bit, Katie, about your path towards coming into coaching and how there was a time where your dad had said, your career may not exist yet, or your business or your job may not exist yet. But will you tell us like literally what was on your mind the morning you decided to become a coach?
What was on my mind the morning I decided to become a coach?
What were you actually like? What was actually on your radar then?
Well, when I went through coach training, I still wasn't sure I was going to become a coach. I was like 22 and pretty like insecure in my own being. I knew I was gifted, like I knew I was special, as we all are, but I didn't really know exactly what I had to offer the world. So I just felt very nervous. Like when I started coach training, I felt nervous and I felt excited, and I knew I was starting something that was going to change the way things were going, but I really didn't know how. And at that time, I was just starting to get really into like astrology and spirituality. And I grew up Catholic, and as did you.
As did
Catholic
I.
Sister over here, CCD in the house. But I knew that like there was a level of spirituality that was beyond what I was taught, and that there was something to access there for me. And so I had just started like, talking to psychics and accessing things like that, and astrologists, and they had told me things about myself, like, you're here to do big things. And I believed it because it felt true to me,
Yeah.
So I was nervous, but I was excited, and I was pretty open to possibility, but I was also pretty terrified because I had been living in a lot of fear, and I was really, really, really bought into what other people said about what was possible at work. And I
What do you
didn't
mean by that?
like I grew up in a family business. So my family has a company that's been around for over 70 years. And so and they like my family founded the company. So they worked to create a certain lifestyle and to create a certain level of financial stability. It's not like it was like generations and generations of wealth at all. And so everybody worked really hard, but creating a business based on your interests, based on what you love, based on helping other people. I remember the first time I told my granddad, who I love so much and has taught me so much, but I remember the first time I told my granddad I wanted to be a writer, he goes, "There's no money in that," which is kind of true. The book publishing industry is kind of misleading, and it's not going to be likely the way you fund your entire life, right? But it wasn't like I wasn't really, we weren't really encouraged to like develop our gifts as part of our work. It was like, you can have interests, but that's a side thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so we teach that like your gifts are actually what helps you make the most money.
Right.
And I think in generations before, it was really like, what do people need, right? What do,
Or like
gosh,
product, like, is
yeah,
there what are you tangibly selling,
right, right. And
And
now I don't even think we've ever like sold a tangible product. So that's even funnier.
well, and I think the definition of tangible has also changed.
Yeah. And also, I will say too, and this is what I think of when you think about the kind of like businesses that were started, 50, 70 years ago, they often needed, like, you needed a location, right? You needed a factory or manufacturing or something like that. Whereas things have really changed and you don't, right? So,
Right. And like we're selling intellectual property, right? And
yeah.
in coach training, we're teaching women how to coach, and then also potentially, if they want to, how to develop their own coaching tools, their own um, methods, their own
Mhm.
programs, their own products, right? And so we're teaching you how to use your intellectual property, your intelligence, your gifts to impact the world. And so, and our number one value prop as a company, the number one thing that we stand for isn't make more money. It's really that the future belongs to the female entrepreneur. And obviously, to be an entrepreneur, you have to make money. You have to create sustainability for yourself. Your products have to be sustainable. Like, we're going for a long-term game here, right?
Right. So you actually had another company when you started coach training. So this is a good segue into my other questions for you. But like, why did you, or what had you thinking that coaching was like the next best step as a businesswoman?
Well, this is a funny story.
Okay, good. I hope it.
We're gonna turn the volume up on this one. So I had started. Okay, here's the story. I was living in New York City. It was 2011. I was living in New York City. I was in this job, a new job, my third job in New York. I was really good at sales. It was a sales job. I was really good at sales. I was had just gotten an award for being one of the highest performing people in the company. It was very male dominated, so I was getting a lot of recognition, and I hated it. I didn't believe in what we were selling anymore because I'm so curious, and I found out some things about the product and how it actually worked, and so I really started doubting what I was doing. And the moment I started doubting what I was doing, I realized, okay, I either have to find a way to fall back in love with this product, or I can't stay here anymore. Like I'm just not, I'm very much a woman of integrity, which you are too. And it's a big part of what we teach in our culture. And so like do what you say and say what you do is really important. And I just couldn't get behind it. So I was like, I have to leave. And I moved home. I moved from New York to DC. I ended up working for my family's company for a little while. And I just was so miserable because it just was so not me. Like I really felt like, whose life am I living? This is not my life. Like this feels very off. And it's not like I had a plan to do one thing and I went in another direction or some big disappointment happened or I didn't get a job. I just felt that my life was not meant to be my life. And that feeling is very depressing. And, you know, I struggle. I very much always struggled with, you know, why am I here? And, questioning things and just lots of like existential conversations with myself. And I just wanted to be part of something bigger. I wanted to create something bigger. And so while I was working for my family's business, I started a blog. Starting the blog led me to starting this organic spray tanning company because when I lived in New York, I went to a girl who did spray tans out of her house and I figured I could do that. Maybe if I built a company, do something on my own, I will feel happier. And the funny story with all of this, my company was called Whole Glow, as you know. But the funny story with this was that like I had all these naked women coming in and out of my apartment in DC. I mean, they were getting dressed before they left. But like I just was, you know, like I'm like, all right, this is better than working in my family's home improvement company. And I love it and I'm grateful for it, but it just wasn't me. And I felt like this was like a next step. And it reminds me of a lot of times when women like, you know, join network marketing companies or they start selling a product on behalf of another company. Like you're just looking for something, right? A sort of a way out, sort of another option. Like, am I even capable of making any money on my own from something that was my idea? And this was even like, you know, I was bought, it was my own company, but I bought the machine from another company and I bought the product. And so I was still borrowing an idea, but it still felt a lot more like my concept. Right. And then I started to brand it. And I had all these little things about finding your glow and getting your glow on. And I loved that. And I really loved creating things. But really what happened was that like these naked women were standing in front of me. I'm such a talker, as you know. And I would just ask them questions like, oh, so do you have a boyfriend? Oh, so how long have you lived in DC? And then they'd start telling me these crazy stories. And people were like telling me about their breakups and about being abused as a child and, you know, how they got to DC and this divorce and wanting to leave their husband. And they were telling me their secrets. And I realized that like, you know, beauty is such an access point to women telling their stories. They say hairdressers have all the secrets in the world. I've seen people even like in the past few years brand themselves as therapists, you know.
Oh, yeah. Well, we've had a lot of hairstylists. Shannon Whaley used to be a hairstylist.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. And so, you know, you get really good at talking when you're in these like beauty industries and these service-based jobs. And so really, I just accidentally started having conversations that I started to feel I was really unequipped to have. And I started to worry because my college degree is in human and organizational development, but it wasn't psychology. You know, I didn't actually know how to counsel people. And I'll just talk about anything. And I'm a natural coach, right? Like I'm a natural healer and I have a lot of gifts as you do and as our trainers do and as the women that we attract as students do. And so I knew I was good at it. And people would tell me, wow, you're really good. Can we keep talking? I'm like, these are 15-minute appointments. Like, you know, put your panties on and get out, right? But I also loved talking to people. And so I was kind of curious. I had hired a business coach myself.
Okay. So you weren't like actively looking to become a coach. It just happened. Like it just came up.
Yeah. I hired a health coach and then I worked with a business coach for a little while. And actually, I started my master's in nutrition because I thought, oh, let me do beauty and health. That makes sense. And
Right.
I dropped out after a summer semester because I hated it.
Well,
I hated
also your
grad school.
coaching business took off right away because you not tell us about the promise you made to yourself when you made that investment.
Yeah. So when I went to sign up for coach training, and don't get scared because our coach training is not this much, but when I went to sign up for coach training, I was like 20, 22 or 23, and I had made some money through Whole Glow. So I knew I was capable of making extra money besides my day job, my salary. And so I sort of believed it was possible to be able to make money as a coach, right? But the program that I was going through, which a friend had introduced me to, was a $15,000 program. And I was like, where am I going to get this money? Like, I wanted to make sure that if I was going to make the investment, I could actually make it back. And that was really, really important to me. And that's become a foundational value inside of IGC's coach training. Like, we start having this conversation with women before they even start class of, do you have a plan to make this money back? And if not, can we work with you to create one?
Yeah.
Because, a lot of people, like, coaching is growing, and you know more about this than I do, like in terms of the industry trends, but coaching is becoming more and more of an alternative to continuing education because it is continuing education. And just like with getting a master's or whatever, people can rack up a lot of debt. And although coaching programs tend to be much more affordable, they're still not $10. So we wanted to make sure that people knew that, like, through investing in this, our expectation and our commitment is that you'll actually be able to make back the money, and that there will very, very much be a return on investment, an ROI from this investment.
Yeah. So great. And yes, I wanted you to say that though, because I feel like we're actually talking about a business, right? So like there's some things that have changed as business has changed over the years, but making money from an investment is foundational. And I remember talking to people who are like, oh, I never even thought that like I would make money right away. And I know that was something that you had originally said to me, like, don't hire me unless you know that you're going to make that money back,
Yeah.
somehow, either through your coaching business, or many people you take coaching while running another business to help them be more productive, or more efficient, or lead better, or create more sales, like you were saying, in MLM style businesses. So everything's great, you became a coach, things are really working out for you, and then what happens? Tell
Well,
us.
then I met you.
Then you met me, and I was like, here's all these other ideas. But like business hasn't, I know you and I agree that like business is fun a lot of the time, but it's not always super easy. So can you tell the people here, I'm really trying to channel my inner, like, I don't know who, Ellen? I'm not that funny, and I'm definitely not going to dance. So not Ellen. I don't know. Maybe Kat Sadler. Can you please tell the good people?
Oprah would be enough.
Oprah, yeah, okay. I'm not even going to try to access that. She's like way too up here for me. Tell us, like, what have been some of the biggest challenges for you in business, and how has like coaching and doing inner work helped you, get here today?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that um I think that the biggest thing for me has been learning how to do the emotional work, doing the personal growth work while also continuing to work. So this is gonna. I actually did take 2 months off of work at the beginning of last year for like various reasons, for health reasons mainly. Um, But in general, like the idea of not working seems really like just not an option for me. And like people will say, well, I have to work because I have a family, or I have to work because I have to make money, or I have to work because I don't have family supporting me. And I have to work because I would shrivel up and die. Like my soul would just, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
For me, like work has been what fucking saved me so many times because okay, so here's the story. The story is I started my coaching business in 2012. In 2013, I met Olivia Chapman, and this is worth saying. I met Olivia through a friend in my coach training program. Olivia and I started working together. She was crazy enough to hire me.
I thought Katie was like living in a crystal castle in the mountains. I was like, oh my God, she's the queen of everything. And she must be so much older and wiser than me.
Yeah. Well,
most of that is true, except older.
And wiser, it depends.
And she doesn't live in the mountains. She lives in the city.
We have our strengths, but Olivia and I had a long history before IGC even existed. And so we worked together for a few years, and I worked with a lot of women like Olivia. And meaning like I started to experience this pattern where, and patterns are really important. People talk about niche, I talk about need. You have to look at what you naturally attract, what people come to you needing, what people come to you asking about. And I was attracting a lot of women who wanted to also do what I did. And I do think part of it was because I was young, and nobody knew how young I was because I did my photo shoots with my glasses and I made sure I looked a little bit older.
She's trying to look old tonight, everyone. It's not real.
But nobody knew how old I was. And so I think they saw this woman who was clearly not super far along in her career, who was doing something that seemed better than what they were doing. You know, you were teaching in DC public schools. I think of some of the other women who either, you know, were just working like PR jobs or marketing jobs, or, you know, training as a yoga teacher to get out of government or corporate, but then that wasn't going to completely support them financially based on the lifestyle they wanted to live. And they didn't want to just move the body. They wanted to talk about things. And so I think in some ways I embodied what people thought like possibility. I embodied possibility, right? And so all these women were like, how do I do what you do? How do I do what you do? And, you know, based on what they needed, I would say, okay, well, there's health coaching programs, and there's, you know, just general coach training programs, and there's more leadership development programs, and da 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 da. But the reality was I kept seeing this pattern. And so, through like a series of events and seeing what people were asking for, I was like, I need to figure out a way to scale this company. And I had done a group coaching program called Ready, Set, Glow, which you did with two friends of mine from coach training. And then IGC was born. And it was really originally born to be a community of like-minded women who also wanted to learn about coaching and get some coach training. It was not nearly as fully developed as it is now in its early stages. In fact, the exact vision for what it was, I don't even think I had a full vision of what it was. I had like these little pieces of, I want to create an environment where, but I didn't know. And this is fast forward, but a year in, Olivia came to me and was like, I really think I know how to make all of this better. And I was like, okay, show me how. And so, you know, what's also really crazy, and this is why like Olivia and I are just such a stand for, you know, like doing the work, doing the emotional work, doing what you've got to do to manage your life while also working. Because 3 months after I launched IGC and we opened the doors, my brother passed away. And that was so crazy and unexpected. He had struggled for a few years with drugs, and then he had been diagnosed as bipolar. And I think mental health stuff is really difficult. And, you know, it's hard to say what came first. And and all that. But the reality is that he was really struggling. And even in launching my business, like even in being a solo coach, a solopreneur, my brother was struggling. And so for some people, it's a child. For some people, it's a sibling. For some people, it's a partner. For some people, they've got health stuff, but we all have things that we're going through, or there's economic challenges, or, your background and where you come from and race and all of these things that hold us back, that make us feel small.
Yeah, that leads me to a good question that I got, actually, question from the audience. So what would you say to the woman who's listening to you right now and saying like, yeah, this worked for you, but I have it a lot worse, so this won't work for me?
Well, I mean, so first of all, let me just share a couple of things. So I launched IGC. 3 months later, my brother dies from an overdose. 6 months after that, my ex, who was involved in the business, calls me after checking himself into the hospital and says he's ending our engagement. Thank God, it was the biggest blessing ever, but there was a lot to navigate. The second year of IGC, I spent a lot of my time in court and with lawyers, protecting the company and trying to get full control of the company back. I bought out our investors. So there were all these things that were happening behind the scenes that people didn't know about. And I wouldn't have told people about back then. I told you, I told a few other people that were higher up in IGC that I could confide in. Obviously, I had a great attorney who was super supportive, and I got the protection that I needed and that the company needed. But what I thought was going to be, a beautiful engagement ended up really not being. And then with all of this, tie in chronic illness. So I had undiagnosed Lyme disease for 10 years, for a decade. There were periods where I was bedridden. There were periods where I couldn't move my hand. There was a period where I lost feeling in half of my body. So there's all these elements of this, right? Then I get diagnosed with PTSD from the trauma of losing my brother and an abusive relationship. And so I just want to say, we don't always know everyone else's story, and it's important to stay open. And it's important to listen. And I felt that way too. I felt like, I felt like there were people that had it worse than me. And then I felt like for other people, it was so much easier. And I really felt like it wasn't fair. And you and I have this conversation a lot, like what is fair, right?
Yeah.
But I am a white woman, and I am, I have a college degree, and I have financial support from my family if needed. So I grew up with a level of wealth, and I used to really feel ashamed of that, but now I think it's just more important to tell the truth. And not every woman in IGC has my situation, but I fully know that, it's easier to navigate certain things when you have certain resources.
Yeah. So give this woman who thinks she has it worse than everyone else, which has been everyone at some time or another, right? Like it just has. Like, what are a few things that you would give her? Like, give her something.
So, okay. So the number one thing is like, you actually have to get perspective from your situation, right? So you have to consider that it could be different. So for me, it was like, I was deeply grieving the loss of my brother. Like I was torn up. I couldn't even get on a call or meeting without crying. I was a mess. And luckily I had support, which I'll get to too. But I had to create that as well. So number one is like, you have to get perspective. So one day this radical idea hit me, and I was like, what if I could get to a place where I celebrate my brother's death? What if I can get to a place where I actually fully feel at peace, like truly, truly, truly? That is a radical, radical idea. So I had to get perspective, and I had to think, God, where could I be in 5 years? Where could I be in 10 years? So try to get some level of perspective of from where you are to where you want to go.
So start seeing what it could look like.
Right. And so people call that a vision. People call that, people call that, a dream, a goal, but you have to really get a little bit higher and look at what you want, and then consider, you don't have to fully believe it, but consider that it's possible. So like, it is possible that whatever you're going through is just a chapter, or it is possible that what you're experiencing is just one book in a series of books. It is possible. If you're not willing to acknowledge that it's possible, then we might not be having the right conversation, right? Like, but if you can somewhere present yourself to the possibility that this is a momentary experience or a decade experience. I was sick. I was praying that God would take me in my sleep. Like, I was so depressed. It got really, really bad and really dark for me. And so, you know, I am very much on the other side of that. Do I still struggle sometimes? Yes, absolutely. But I've built this life that's really supportive. So I think perspective is the number one thing. I also think the other thing you have to do is you have to be able to measure your progress. So like, going through a program is really helpful because there's lessons and there's classes, and maybe you make monthly payments and you feel really proud of yourself when you make those payments. You get one client. I mean, that's just an example. For some people, the game is like sobriety, right? I was talking to a friend about sobriety the other day, and he was saying how, like, you know, making the X's on the calendar shows progress. Happiness is progress. So, you know, for me, did I feel better going to therapy once I finally found, it took me 12 therapists to find somebody I actually felt could really help me. Did I feel better when I went to therapy? I don't know, but I just was like, I'm going to get through 6 sessions. I'm going to get through 6 therapy sessions. And I figured I wasn't going to feel better at 2. I wasn't necessarily going to feel better at 3, maybe not even 4, but I thought possibly I'd feel like a little better at 6. So you got to find some way to measure your own progress and where you're headed. And again, I do think that's why like training programs are really, really helpful, because they give you steps. There's things to learn. And then I think the other one really worth noting is support. Like, you have to get yourself into an environment where you feel supported. And I don't even know if I've told you this, Olivia, but like, there was a time where I was going to like any support group I could. I went to CODA meetings, which is Codependent Anonymous. I went to SLAA meetings. I went to Sex and Love Addict Anonymous. I didn't know what was wrong. I couldn't figure out.
Oh, I do remember you called me once from outside of like an Al-Anon meeting. I was
going to Al-Anon meetings. I was going to AA meetings. I was going to Marijuana Anonymous meetings, because I knew that something didn't feel right. I knew that like I couldn't totally get a handle on my mindset and my thoughts. And so I just was like, let me go sit in rooms with other people who are working through this, right? So, I mean, that's like an extreme option maybe, or maybe not, but that's free and that's available to anybody. And I also like, I because of my relationship, I had to go through, because it went to court, and because it was it was an abusive relationship, I had to go through domestic violence counseling. So I was sitting in these rooms with women who had really, really struggled, and some of them were still in contact with their abuser. And you know, I had a lot of different experiences, and I got a lot of support. And I also believe that the more supportive you have to be in your job or in your family, the more support you need. And not everybody has a huge budget for that support. I'm also like very conservative financially. So I did everything I could that was free. Mm-hmm. And there's online classes that are free. These workshops that we're doing are free. There's other women online, but sometimes you also need to see people in person. And for me, like, I just needed like some people need like a 3-prong approach. I needed like a 3 million prong approach. Like,
well, it was that's like, also like what you teach in terms of like finding your resources, right? Yeah. Because we may not have some resource, right? Like money, which is a common one that we talk about, especially in the world of coaching and business and so forth. But like, there's so many things. Everyone, I'll just add, like, I don't like to pay for anything I don't have to pay for, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we talk in training, like, I'm the scrappiest entrepreneur, and so are you. But mm-hmm. like, you can develop or discover different resources. And Katie teaches, well, you want to talk about it for a minute, the MELTS model, because I think it might kind of break this down for people.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've gotten so much flack because people are like, you just don't get it because of, where you come from and your family and da 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 da. Fine, I understand. And I do think that often money can be like the strongest and most powerful resource in terms of the value that we give it in our culture. It hasn't always been like that. So there's 5 main resources that we talk about in IGC. Money, it's MELTS. Money, energy, love, time, and space. Money, energy, love, time, and space. And I'll tell you, like, the biggest one for me that I struggled with that maybe you have a little bit more of is energy. I mean, when I was like depressed in these like PTSD trauma loops, chronically ill on 30 antibiotics a day, antidepressant, then this medicine if I have a panic attack, I had no energy. I was completely building the business from my bed. And I just was like, I was operating at about 40% and then 50% of my full potential. And I think I'm at like 75 or 80% now. I can't wait to get to 100. And then I'm going to reset all the measures. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, just rebirth myself in this lifetime. But I mean, I remember when I came back from taking time off, and I never took any time off when my brother died. I took 2 weeks, but that it just wasn't sufficient. And so when I finally took time off and I found a doctor who could actually cure my Lyme disease, and I really I did a little bit more therapy. I went a little bit deeper with the abuse that had happened. And I started to really understand things a bit more. And I started to understand actually what was going on in this mind of mine. And I had gotten very confused because in the coaching industry, a lot of people are in spiritual or self-help. A lot of people will say, just think differently, think differently. And I literally, because there was so much trauma, I had lost control of my mind. My mind didn't work the way that other people's minds worked. And in IGC, we tend to attract a lot of women who have gone through some stuff. And even like, you can even have had like an abusive situation at work that really shuts you down. And it could be 10 years later and you're in coach training class trying to do our role playing or trying to get hired. And something comes up is like, oh, you remember when that boss reamed you out in front of that group, and that's still in your mindset. So you can't just think your way through everything. Sometimes we actually have to go in and rewire things. And so I did a lot of work to do that so that I could be present. And I know that I'm different now after I took time off and came back than I was before. But I had to give myself that like experience of really healing the deeper things.
Yeah.
And that's how you find your glow, folks.
Okay, we have some more questions. You talked a little bit about like the needing to go to therapy and get some, like medical help essentially. Mm-hmm. But when you're kind of, running at normal speed, which I would say you are now, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is where I want you to answer this question from, because we are big advocates about like recognizing actual medical conditions and mental health. And there is a time and a space for coaching and spirituality. And there's a time and a place for Western or Eastern medicine, right? Like, so when you're just running at normal speed or higher speed, which is your normal, like everyone talks a big game about morning practices and spirituality, and you have like the connection and you're channeling and all that stuff. Okay. But we're busy AF, right? So what do you actually do on a regular basis to like be spiritually sound, and like, what does that actually look like?
It's such a good question. And people talk a lot about like morning practices and setting yourself up for success.
Yeah. And they're like, if I don't read my mantras, I can't be successful. I'm like, I haven't read a mantra in 5 years. So like, what do you tell me?
Okay. But you're like preaching and like whatever, living by brand values that are now very much in your life.
Yeah, they're just tattooed on my soul. Okay.
Work for yourself, not by yourself. I do
have things that I like I filter my life through that are on my bulletin board, but I'm not like dysfunctional without them. So like, what is a busy, whether you're busy running your business, your household, managing a career and something else, but like give us a little insight into like what actually goes on.
Yeah, to me, you just have to be like wildly aware of what's going on inside of here every moment of every day. So I just know if I'm unbalanced, I know if I'm hungry, I know if I need to work out, I know if I need space. I just can feel those things now. I'm a lot more in tune. Before, there was just so much going on that I couldn't even pull out the threads. But now I can pull out the threads really easily. And 5 years ago, I could pull out the threads. It was just that like all this stuff happened in between that made things confusing. And so I just pay like really close attention to what's going on. And I just try to give myself what I need in each moment that's actually reachable or accessible. So if that means calling you to be like, hey, I don't know how to handle this, or what would you do in this situation? I do that. If it means like calling a girlfriend, if I had a stressful day, I do that. If it means like being alone, I do that. I really try to, my self-care looks like tuning in moment by moment and readjusting based on what I'm feeling in each moment. And it's funny, Laura Ellen, who is a longtime client of ours and is one of our leaders in IGC, she was doing some work with me the other day, and it was like a stressful morning, and she looked at me and she's like, it's okay, we can still turn today around. And I was like, I love that. But and now, and I think that's such a great way to put it. But for me, it's like that times 30 in one day, right? And I don't even have children like you do. So that's a whole nother element. But I do still struggle with my health in some ways. And I do like still have really hard mornings sometimes. So a morning routine or having this exact yoga practice, or I try to work out 4 times a week, like sweat my shit out, my extra energy, my angst, like I try to process my emotions and energy. Emotions are just energy in motion. I try to process that. And then I try to like support myself with, be around people that I love and get rid of anything that I don't love. And then I try to eat healthy. I mean, that's my self-care.
It's like just intuitive and conscious living, right? Like you may not have like a rigid routine because that's not really intuitively led for you.
No, but I do have a pretty good map of like, when I feel blank, do blank.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like the needs chart.
Yeah, exactly. The needs chart. That was one of the biggest things for me, was like, I never, when one of my first coaches was like, okay, Katie, I hear that you're angry. What do you need? And I was like, I need you to not ask me that question. You know what I mean? Yeah. I didn't know what I needed. So I was so offended by people asking, because I thought it was other people's job to help me figure out me. Mm-hmm. And like, you're your biggest project in this lifetime. Even when you have kids, I would think this still applies. And I know it shifts and changes, but at the end of the day, like, mama's got to be good.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I agree with all of that too. Like, I'm very similar. I don't do all that extra stuff.
What's extra stuff?
Who wants to do anything extra except like extra in the fun sense?
But what do you mean by extra stuff? Like,
like I don't need to write out gratitude lists every day. Just think about all the things. Like when you say I have to turn things around, that's what I think of. Like, okay, I'm complaining about this or I'm upset about this, but instead, like I have all of this, right? So like I kind of go through those things in my head, like on the spot, more so than like needing 30 minutes in the morning to like pull a card and write a gratitude. Like I used to do stuff like that and it worked. But
yeah, sometimes like it just, that doesn't flow with your life anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, to me now it feels like that would be a luxury, honestly, but
but it also may not be what you need, you know. However, I still, when I wake up in the morning, I think about the first thing that comes to me is like, fuck, like, right. So I'm like,
No,
what
yeah.
are all the I'm not a morning person at all. Like, no, morning doesn't even exist for me. So I wake up and I think, what are all the things that are stressing me out today? Maybe it's business, maybe it's a house thing. Owning a home is so stressful. Maybe it's whatever, right? A relationship, a dynamic. Ugh. And then I go, okay, what am I grateful for? Like, Katie, you can fucking do this. I'm constantly pumping myself up. I call it positive brainwashing, but positive self-talk and just like, I feel good. I feel sick a lot still. I'm like, I feel great. I feel great. And then I get up and I get moving and I get my coffee and I maybe go for a walk and I do feel like pretty great.
So you kind of like self-coach throughout the day in a sense.
Definitely, dude.
So that's also like the thing about this work. And I think like what kind of bringing it back to like the glowing from the inside out, like coaching is an access point to be able to do that. Right.
Yeah.
Like there's not a lot of careers where you can really like show up from a shit storm and have it turn around completely by your own, you being the driving force of that. So
no, and I do think that with this kind of work and living the kind of lifestyle that we live, like you can create spaciousness in your life to be able to do the work. Like when I meet someone, they're like, oh, like I lost my brother too, or, and they're like, I just have never really gotten over it. I've never really dealt with it. I'm like, God, that's so hard. Like, we have to deal with what's going on. We have to get to the root of things. And I think that in order to really enjoy our lives, we have to be really present for our lives. And that means like a daily, like, amping yourself up and coaching yourself and then detoxing and getting rid of the negativity or and having boundaries. Boundaries are another thing that are so important. I know it's really important for you and being a mom, like having work and then home life. And for me, like, I have to be even more rigid sometimes because I don't have kids and there could be no separation. I could work around the clock.
mm.
So we have to have time for ourselves and our families and our interests outside of work. And when our main interests become work, then developing new interests, because your brain needs a break.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally have like work dreams that I think are real. And then I feel like I worked all night and I couldn't possibly work all day too.
I was dreaming about those images in our Access Ally portal, and I didn't even see them. You just told me about them.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I need like a 30-second answer because I have two more questions I want to get to before the
Got
topic
it.
is over. So we talk a lot in coaching lately or like this year about grit, right? And we actually give our students the grit test before they join training, which is a book written by psychologist Angela Duckworth. And so Jen actually asked this question, Jen Hepton, tell me like what made you gritty? 30 seconds.
I think it's my family.
Yeah.
I think it's the men in my family in particular and the women. Everyone's really intense, but I think it's my family. And then also this like real belief that my soul is very old and I feel a lot of pressure to create in this lifetime. And I've always felt that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I'm just like naturally a high performer and very focused. And then I have also worked to amp up my own focus largely by like praying for more focus.
Yeah. Okay, great. That makes sense to me. And just for everyone, grit just means like the ability or the desire to keep persevering even when shit's not working out. And you can build up grit. So have no fear if you're a quitter. I used to be one, but I also, not really, I just would change direction. But okay, great answer. And then the last one.
Wait, I got to say one more thing. There's
Okay.
got to be something worth being gritty for.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, like if you're in that space, and I remember when Olivia was here and I remember when I was here, where you're like, life's not that great. Like it's not even that worth it. You got to go find what could maybe be great about life. You know what I'm saying? Like that's when you get into that dark place.
Persevering towards nothing is not really going to work for very long. You have to have something that you're going for,
Right.
that you actually want. Okay, so the last thing before we leave is you talk a lot about the fact that you believe that anyone can be successful, right? It's going to be harder for some people, and we've acknowledged that, and you've acknowledged that. But for someone watching this right now who wants to, discover their glow, what would you say is their next step?
There was a lot there. So anybody can be successful. I mean, that success really has to be defined on your terms. And then
okay, so first is define what your success looks like.
Mine?
Right? No, that's what you're saying. Like first you have to figure out what success means.
Yes.
Okay.
If you want to be successful, you need to define what success is to you.
Yes. Okay.
And get more specific. So most people say, I want to make a lot of money. How much money? And account for taxes. But you have to get really specific. I want to be in a relationship. What kind of relationship? What do you want to experience with that person? So what would success really look like to you? And maybe it actually, when you go through it all, it's like, oh, I just want to be happy. Then you have to think, okay, well, what kind of environments, what kind of situations would allow me to be happier? What would that even look like?
Got it. Cool. Anything else you want to add to that?
I think that finding your glow is a daily practice. I think that your job is to ask yourself every day, like, what is my greatest level of want? What do I want today? What is my desire? Remember when I asked you that question, what do you really want? And you were like, no one's asked me that. Ask yourself. You actually are a person who can ask yourself, what do I really want? And if you ask yourself that question every day, you asked about self-care. This is the key to self-care. What do I want? What does my body want? I want water. I want a bath. I want to take a night off. I don't want to work today, right? But what do I really want? And sometimes you'll have competing desires. You got to get to the core. What is the thing you really want? And then wrap all of your actions around that.
Love it. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you,
everyone, for joining us. And that's all the questions. I mean, what's next? What's next?
What's the next step?
I mean, actually, we do have something. Here's just a little plug for Kelly. We do have another masterclass tomorrow. Kelly will be leading, and she's going to be teaching around how to, if you are interested in spirituality and healing and yoga and any of those different modalities, Kelly's going to be teaching about how coaching can kind of bring it all together. So similar to what Katie was talking about before, she wasn't sure if it was nutrition or therapy or something. And Kelly's going to be teaching about that tomorrow.
Yeah.
Any last words, Katie, before we wrap up for the night?
Well, if people want to talk to us, if they want to talk to any of our trainers, what's the next best step? Should they join the pop-up group? Or I know a lot of people are in there now, but
yeah, I would say the next best step is to book a call. So yes, Kelly Curtis is tomorrow night at 7 p.m. I'll post a couple links here for booking a call and also for our scholarship. So
yeah. So if you want to chat with me or Liv at all about coach training, about the programs that we offer, about what we do, you're more than welcome to book a 20-minute call with either of us. Or you can talk with one of our trainers. Kelly is one of them. Kelly is amazing. Thanks, Jen. Shannon or Kate, they're phenomenal women who can, walk you through all of this. And then we have this amazing scholarship that Olivia is going to share the link to, but we have a $27,000 scholarship fund that we've set aside for fall coach training, which we're pretty proud of. And, it's taken a bit of work on our end, and we're happy to do it. And we really hope that we'll be able to expand our impact, and that we'll be able to teach other women how to expand theirs who maybe wouldn't have had the opportunity because of finances. And we just want to be creating more diversity and inclusion in the coaching industry overall. So
yeah,
Liv, I want to acknowledge you for really putting that together and working so hard on the scholarship. I know it was a company-wide effort.
Yeah.
but that was something that you've been asking for a while. And I just love you and appreciate you so much. I'm so grateful to be able to do this work together. And I thank you guys all for watching and tuning in.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for your honesty and your realness. I know I hyped it up like I was going to ask you like something
like,
totally
what kind of underwear do you wear? And I was going to be like,
and I almost did, but I think what we covered tonight was actually a lot more valuable than my funny questions. Just in case no one was watching, I was going to ask them. No, I'm just kidding. But thank you for being super honest. And
of course.
Signing off. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.